Hello, welcome to Learning Life Podcast. My name is Tadisha, and I'm so glad you're here. This is a safe place where we can both learn and unlearn a lot of things about life. Let's get started.
Hi, welcome back to the podcast. And today I want to talk about perfectionism. And so I've been learning a lot about perfectionism, and I have been a long time perfectionist. So what I've been learning has really helped to kind of get me out of that rut of thinking that everything I do has to be perfect, or that if something doesn't seem good enough in my eye, that it's not worth even trying. And so, honestly, I have been learning that perfectionism is kind of rooted in some kind of trauma. So I would say it's a trauma response. Because when you think you have to be perfect, what really is going on is that you're trying to get validation, or you're trying to get applause from someone. And so you think that the only way that you can get that is by being perfect. And the thing is, what you're really after is love. But you're thinking that to do something perfectly, to whatever it is, to be the perfect person, that's the only way that you can get the love or whatever it is that you want. But I think the root, this is odd to say. I think the root of all evil is love. And so it's kind of like, sounds contradictory, right? But let me explain. In other words, people don't do bad things because, I would say, not because they want the whatever it is they did to get that thing. It's really that at some point in their life, they suffered something, and now they will do anything to get that fake love. And so a lot of times, I guess the best example I can give is when people are power hungry or attention hungry. That's not the bad side yet. But some people do bad things because they were hurt. I think that's the best way to say it. They were hurt sometime in their life so bad that now they feel pain, and all they can give back is pain. So anyways, I don't mean to get all into that. That's just an idea I have. But anyways, the perfectionism is rooted in thinking that in order to be loved, you have to be perfect. And I was in that trap for a long time. Eventually it breaks you. And so it's kind of good and bad, because then you're free. It's a painful experience, but that's that's the experience of life. Um, so perfectionism. So I would do things thinking that, oh, I'll get praise from people, or family, and then they'd be like not really caring, or in my eyes, what was perfect and excellent actually wasn't. And that's another kind of illusion of perfectionism, is that it's subjective. You think that this is really good, but according to your limited knowledge, yeah, it's good. But there's so much more out there. So it's funny how our own brains can kind of trick us into limitations. And so perfectionism really isn't going to help you get anywhere. It's actually more of a limitation. It, if you become aware that, I don't want to say it like that. How about this? When you become aware that if you try something new, that you have to practice it for a while before you get good at it and strive towards excellence, that's a better mentality to have than to think that, oh, I'm gonna be this has got to be perfect before I do it. In other words, perfection can also become a good grounds for excuse. And I used to do that a lot as well. I would say, oh, this isn't good enough. I'm not going to release it. Oh, this video is bad. I'm not gonna post it on YouTube. It's just not good. I was listening to an influencer recently that I follow, and she was talking about her experience starting on YouTube, and she said something to the effect that, oh, if I, as a teenager, I'll just say, she explained that when she was a teenager, she started her YouTube channel, and now she's a beauty influencer, and she was saying that if she had to let her fears and her inability to do everything perfectly stop her, then she would never be where she's at today, which is a full-time influencer with, brand deals and all kinds of things. So, in other words, perfectionism really stops progress. And the only way you can get good at something is by trial and error. And so this is kind of the best way to always stay aware that you're learning. You're never going to be perfect. I like to say it like this lately. I say I'm striving for excellence. And I feel like that's a really good differentiation to make. That's what I've been using lately when I get caught up in trying to make something fit into this idea I have of perfection. I say to myself, I'm striving for excellence. So I just want to be better, get a little bit better at what it is I'm doing every every day if I can. Or whatever the time mark is that you have created for yourself. You're working towards something and you're getting a little bit better at it, one step at a time. Now, just because I think it's great to mention, I stumbled across this really interesting book lately, and I'm like halfway through it, and it's really, really good. And it's called The Mountain Is You. So it's a really great book, and it's dealing with that kind of issue and as well self-sabotage, which is like all in the same boat. So yeah, The Mountain Is You, which is true. When I saw the title, I was like, oh, that's for me. The mountain is me. So let's go into scripture. I want to go into Matthew chapter 23, and I have two areas I'm going to skip through. Like I always say, please read the whole chapter. Um, and this is amplified because I got a really good grasp out of this from reading amplified. I'm going to go straight over to verse 10. It says, do not let yourselves be called leaders or teachers, for one is your leader and teacher, the Christ. But the greatest among you will be your servant. Whoever exalts himself shall be humbled, and whoever humbles himself shall be raised to honor. And so when I read this in the Amplified Bible, I was like, wow, it's a funny thing that a lot of times people always want to be the boss. They create this image, right? And so when you're trying to do that, it's really easy to get stuck in your idea of what you should and should not be. And in other words, bear with me. I'm trying to get to a point. Um, in other words, you like the title and you think that the title has an image. And in this verse, read the whole verse or the whole chapter for context. It's saying that people like to be called the rabbi, the teacher, the leader, because when they hear that, it makes them feel better about themselves. It's a compensation thing that they're trying to do. Um, and that's something that I'm always trying to be careful of, because when you're sharing your advice, your life advice, like I am, it's easy to trip up, because it could easily sound like, oh, I know everything. But like, the whole purpose of this podcast is for me to share what I'm learning as I go. When I share, I'm hoping that it inspires you and that you can learn something from it. And a lot of times I've heard people share their experiences, and I learned so much from it. And it enlightened me, it inspired me. And I learned that really they don't have it all figured out. And They are not trying to be perfect, and they are not trying to create like this false image of perfection about who they are as people and also professionally. And that's something I always admire, when people are just who they are. Perfectionism will kind of make you feel that you have to be something big. And again, I think that's rooted out of some kind of trauma. Now, I want to jump over to the other verse in the same chapter, which kind of, I think, says this a lot better than I can explain it, is verse 25. It says, "Woe to you, self-righteous scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you clean the outside of the cup and of the plate, but inside they are full of extortion and robbery and self-indulgence and unrestrained greed. You, spiritually blind Pharisee, first clean the inside of the cup and of the plate. Examine and change your inner self to conform to God's precepts, so that the outside, your public life and deeds, may be clean also. Woe to you, self-righteous scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you are like whitewashed tombs, which look beautiful on the outside, but inside are full of dead men's bones and everything unclean. So you also outwardly seem to be just and upright to men, but inwardly you are full of hypocrisy and lawlessness." Stopping there at verse 28. And so I don't think there's anything else I need to say about that. That explains it very clearly, that we as people tend to like to create a perfect image, and it does something for our ego. It does something uh that that makes us feel superior. If we can instruct other people, then that means that we are superior. That's what some people think. And really, when you learn about life, you realize there is so much that you're ignorant of, and it's impossible to ever really know everything. I mean, how I have to think out loud sometimes. It's like, how can you ever think you can know everything? Well, what you should strive for is excellence. So if you are trying to be good in a profession, then you should strive to be excellent in that profession. It actually makes me think of something that my father once told me, and he said something to the effect that pick a job and do your best at it, give it your all. So in the same way, stop trying to be perfect, but dedicate yourself to something and strive for excellence. Excellence is not perfection. I don't like the word perfection anymore. Okay? So, I want to also, well, I'm not going to actually read this verse, but there's a, and one more thing related to wanting to be the teacher, the leader, the the big man. Funny story that someone told me. There's this woman, there's this guy who was like trying to get people to get in the line for the I think it was I don't know, just someone told me the story. And the woman, she was from the islands, the Caribbean, and the guy, who I don't know what he was doing. He was one of those like people who take your ticket or something like that. He was getting aggressive. And the woman said in her accent, she said, Mr. Big Man, Mr. Big Man. So that story always, it makes me think how, yeah, some people, they get just a little bit of power, and all of a sudden they overdo it. And so he was over commanding everybody to get in line and whatever. So yeah, Mr. Big Man. Anyways, yeah, so we're always trying to be the big man, always trying to be this picture perfect image. That's why I don't like social media, because social media is like all about an image. It causes so much confusion when you make people think it's just deception. I won't get all into that, but yeah, the best thing I think I would say is that
everybody's learning from each other. So I'm learning from someone, and maybe you are learning from me, and it goes on and on and on. I like this saying a lot, iron sharpens iron. So hopefully everybody is learning and, sharing knowledge. I spoke about this in a previous episode, and it was about the man who went to Jesus and he said, Lord. It was funny the way he approached Jesus too, because I think he said something like, good teacher. You could immediately tell that there was an angle he had. And I just love that when I've been reading in the New Testament about Jesus lately, that Jesus always knew how to deal with every person, and he discerned the spirits of every person. So this I think it was a young man. He goes to Jesus and he says, Rabbi, or he says, teacher. He says, I've done all this. I'm wealthy. I've got a name. People know me. Da da da. He says, what do I need to do? What else do I need to do to be perfect? And that's the magic word, perfect. And I love this verse. He says to him, if you want to, if you will be made perfect, go and sell everything you have, and then you will be perfect. And I can't imagine what happened in that moment when that young guy heard what Jesus told him, go and sell everything. I know that had to have been a scene. So anyways, the young man left and he was sad. And so what happened here is we see that this young guy wanted validation and he wanted praise from Jesus. And it's like he's saying, I'm perfect. Validate me, Jesus. And Jesus, who is perfect, says, well, if you want to be perfect, go ahead and sell everything you have, and then you will be perfect. And that's the irony there, because Jesus did it. Because when Jesus came on earth, he did not act as a king. He did not. Do you get what I'm saying? Everything is his, but he was a servant to us. Jesus is the Son of God. He came on earth and served us. That's why further along in the Bible, I don't remember the chapter, Jesus says to serve is the greater. I'm paraphrasing it, but so that young man was sad because he didn't get the validation that he wanted. He wanted to be perfect, or at least he was caught up in this idea that he was perfect. And Jesus spoke and told him the truth. So I hope this message blessed you. Please feel free to like, comment, share. I love to hear from you. Take care until next episode. Peace and love. This is Learning Life Podcast. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope that you learned something, that you enjoyed this episode. If you want to support this podcast, please subscribe. Thank you so much. See you next week.